Well, hey there, welcome once again to Drummer Daily. My name is Daniel Hadaway, aka the Drum Coach, and I'm so happy you could join me again today for another exciting, hopefully fun edition of Drummer Daily. This is episode number 152, and as always, if I happen to mention any links or products or anything else that you might want to go check out more, they'll always be in the show notes for every episode of this podcast that you hear. And you can always find it at danielhadaway.com/the episode number. So today's show notes would be at danielhadaway.com/152. So sometimes, on this podcast, we talk about it is serious. I like talking about music and things like this because it's not as depressing as, the evening news or anything like that. There's not any bad news normally that we have to talk about or anything that's, politics or wars or anything like that, so that stuff I think is like real serious, and it can be depressing sometimes. So I like talking about drums because that kind of stuff is not stuff that we have to talk about. At least for 10 minutes or so each day in this podcast, we don't have to talk about stuff like that. But I do think that a lot of the stuff that we talk about here is pretty serious as far as, becoming a professional drummer or taking music seriously or becoming better at our craft. But then sometimes there's things that we can just talk about here on this podcast, and we can talk about them just because it's fun. And one of the things that I really enjoy about drums, and this is probably true of any musician about with whatever instrument they play, but I love talking about drums and drumming because I think there's so much cool gear out there in the world and so much cool stuff. And I honestly, I just think that drums sound cool. Drums sound cool, cymbals sound cool, all these cool sticks and everything. All this gear that we have is really cool. It's just a lot of fun. I'm kind of a gear geek. Now, I'm actually not super educated about gear. I'm not as educated about gear as a lot of other people out there in the drum world. I probably don't know how many plies of wood are in my drums. I think I know what kind of wood my drums are made out of, but I'm not sure. I just know that I hear it, I like it, and that's about as far as I go a lot of times with gear. But I do know, I do know a decent bit about different types of drums, what's out there, different cymbals, things like that. So today I got a question in from a listener, and it just says, what are your thoughts on riding on a ride cymbal versus crashing on a ride cymbal? And I thought that's kind of a fun question. It's not anything that's going to be earth-shattering to anybody, but I thought sometimes it's fun just to hang out and talk shop about drums. So I thought we'd do that today. So the way I answer any question on this show is just based on my own personal experience. And so I have a couple of ride cymbals right now that I kind of switch between when I am, whatever situation, depending on the situation that I'm in. I actually have three, right now that I think about it, I actually have three ride cymbals. And I'll get to that in a minute. But I just switch those out, use them in different situations. So I'll just kind of start from there. I will say this, I don't necessarily, obviously the name that you get from a manufacturer, the manufacturer is going to name a cymbal a ride cymbal or a crash, or maybe a crash ride that combines the two sometimes. But I don't really necessarily think about the name that's been given when considering what position it's going to be. It's a good indication, but I like to play every cymbal physically before I buy it. I just kind of play the cymbal. If it sounds like it'd be a good cymbal to add to what I have for whatever reason, then yeah, it's going to make the cut. Doesn't matter what it's called. So I'm just going to list off a few of the cymbals that I use right now, ride cymbals. The one that I use the most is kind of like my favorite cymbal that I have, probably my favorite cymbal that I've ever had. And it's a Zildjian, it's a Sound Lab prototype. It's a 22-inch. And it's a prototype, Zildjian Sound Lab. They do these kind of one-off cymbals. Sometimes they'll make them for artists. Sometimes they'll make them for other reasons. And they just kind of, they don't label them in a way that lets you know what they are. So you kind of just have to know what they are. So this one, and maybe you heard that, I'm actually sitting here looking at it behind the drum kit. But this one is so I said it's a Zildjian SoundLab prototype. It's 22-inch, and the body of the cymbal. So it's a hybrid of two cymbals. So the body, the actual, most of the surface of the cymbal is hammered and is made the way a K Constantinople Renaissance ride would be made. But then the bell of the cymbal is the bell from an overhammered ride. So, and I may have got those two reversed. It might be the other way around. But either way, it's a combination of a overhammered and a Renaissance ride. And so I love this one. It's big, it's washy, it's really thin, so it's really lightweight. In fact, it actually weighs less than the other ride cymbal that I pretty much always have set up, which is a Zildjian K Constantinople 20-inch medium thin high ride cymbal. Now it actually doesn't say ride cymbal on it. It's just a medium thin high. I think they may not label their rides as much either. It's just a medium, but most people will use this as like a jazz ride. I actually have it set up right now as a crash cymbal, 20-inch crash cymbal. But like I said, it actually weighs more than the 22-inch prototype that I have. So it's a little thicker, it's a little higher pitched. But I do actually, and a lot of times when I play, I'll use this, even though it's over kind of in like I'd say the #1 crash position, just over the rack tom. Even though it's up there, I'll still play it like a ride cymbal sometimes, because it is made to be used as a ride cymbal. Like I said, it washes out a lot because it's more of a jazzy ride. So in really quiet things, I might use this one as a ride cymbal. And then in louder situations, I'll use the SoundLab prototype. So I kind of use those a lot. And then the other one that I have is Zildjian. It's a K custom medium ride. It's the one that came in that, it comes in the worship pack, the Zildjian worship pack, which they sent me because I'm on the box for that worship pack. And so they sent me that pack of cymbals. And so I have that cymbal as well. And I'll use that for more when I need a more defined ride sound, a little more, maybe more mainstream kind of pop, a little less organic or rootsy sounding stuff. I'll use that as a ride cymbal. But the reason why I mentioned just all of the gear that I have is I want to say that I also have I have an 18-inch K Dark Crash. I've used that as a ride cymbal before. And most of the time, when I go out and play out or play on tours or things like that, I only play with two cymbals set up. I play with the first two cymbals that I mentioned, the SoundLab prototype and the K Constantinople medium thin high ride. So they're both ride cymbals, but I use them both as crashes. And personally, I like to have cymbals that are versatile. I don't like having a ton of cymbals set up around me. Probably mostly for the looks, if I'm honest. If I'm brutally honest with myself, it's because I don't like the way it looks with a bunch of cymbals for me. But I'm just trying to get to the point of saying that I don't like having purpose-built cymbals. It's like there's I think it's Alton Brown, the guy who's the TV cook guy. He has like that show Good Eats that was on TV for a long time. He talks about how he hates like purpose-built single-use machines in the kitchen. Like he hates like the idea of like a pasta maker, and then a purpose-built ice cream maker, a purpose-built fryer, things like that. Because he's like, you can probably find one piece of gear that'll do a lot of different things, and you can have less things sitting around your kitchen. I feel the same way about cymbals most of the time. I don't like having a bunch of super distinctive cymbals that don't serve most songs. Honestly, I'm on a budget still, and I don't just buy like everything that comes around. I don't like having a splash cymbal up on my kit because there'll be one song at one point, in an hour and a half long concert, there'll be one song where it gets hit once. I just find another way to do that. But that's just my personal preference. But I have no qualms, to actually answer the question, I have no qualms about crashing on a ride cymbal. Even that big, the thick the K Custom medium ride that I have no problem crashing on that. The big thing to keep in mind is that a lot of times when I'm crashing on ride cymbals, I'm in situations where the cymbals are being mic'd. Most of the time they're being recorded, or I'm in a big enough venue where the stage volume coming to the audience is not as much of an issue. So I'm able to, not really think about, okay, if I really want to wash out this, this big thick ride cymbal, how is it gonna, is it gonna just sound like insanity to everyone else? I don't have to think about that too much. But I will say that in a recording situation too, when you crash on a ride cymbal, and this is something, again, I always talk about mixing with your ears or mixing through the microphones. And this also definitely goes with choosing what to play. I've early on when I first got some studio experience, I started learning how my cymbals sounded drastically different just in the context of a mix, even before they've been, compressed or EQ'd or anything. Just the way the cymbals, when they go through mics and they actually get blended in with all the other instruments, how different they sound than what they sound to me sitting right here at the drum kit. And one of the first things I noticed was, man, this ride cymbal, when I wash it out and really go for it on this ride cymbal, whatever one it was, it actually sounds a lot more musical and a lot more pleasant coming through the mics than it does to me right here in person. And if I never discovered that, I never would be comfortable washing out the ride cymbal the way that I did. So I always would encourage you just to listen to your cymbals, just like anything else on your drum kit, through the mics that you're using and the way that it's being presented to an audience, whether that's through a PA, live, or whether it's on a recording, or whether it's none of those. It's just in a restaurant and you're playing, jazz music or background music, or you're in a wedding band or whatever it is. Do your best to perceive all of your instruments the same way that your audience is going to. That'll help you play much more in tune with I guess I should say much more tastefully, much more in tune with what your audience is hearing. And I think that you'll be happy, your band leader will be happy, or whoever hired you will be happy, and your audience will be happy, which is the ultimate goal. So I hope you had fun today just talking about cymbals. I know I did. It's good just to take a break every once in a while and just hang out and talk shop. So I hope you enjoyed it. We'll be back again tomorrow for another episode of Drummer Daily, but until then, go play the drums. Have fun. That's what I'm going to do. As soon as I stop this recording, I'm playing the drums, and I hope you do too. All right, thanks for joining me. Bye for now.